Hello, everybody, ladies and gentlemen. My name is JoDa, and I just want to extend a very heartfelt thank you from the bottom of my heart for making our inaugural meeting of the Stow Film Society to date a smashing success. It's just awesome to see people. Woo! Absolutely. This is our official launch pad here. We're trying to, with the society, unite professionals from the TV and film industries behind a benevolent cause, uniting people from the business community, the art community, behind what the Film Commission has been espousing for many years, and that is to rebrand Vermont filmmaking as a media mecca, where we have this brain drain. It seems like once people graduate, they just automatically emigrate to a bigger city for more opportunity. We have the talent pool here. Why not organize so that we have an in-house production company where we have development and production and even distribution under one roof, under one umbrella. So it is possible, and that's why we're here, united, forging ahead for a synergy, if you will, of cross-pollination. We have the talent, we've got the intellect, so let's get things happening. So I applaud you all for coming out tonight. I thank you very much.
And we should applaud you for doing it.
Thanks very much. But that being said, it's not the JoDa Dog and Pony show at all. I just have to extend a very heartfelt thank you to our VIP guest speaker tonight, Mr. Ostby, for coming out tonight. Very special guest. Thank Tim Cavanaugh for being a linchpin, making this happen tonight very much. My producer, Ricky G, over there. Joe Buckshin over there from the Vermont State Film Commission as well. Thank you very much. What is the Stow Film Society? I think I wrapped that up. Pretty much it's just a synergy of business people and art people trying to forge ahead and get the face-to-face contact, because in Vermont it's really hard sometimes. We're all in our little ivory towers, and it's good to get out and get some fresh air and share it with people over some good food and conversation. So briefly, I'll give my bio, and then I'll open it up to our Master of Ceremonies tonight, Mr. Tim Cavanaugh. He will introduce Hawk himself. I'm a producer, screenwriter, living off the grid right now in a little log cabin in Sutton, Vermont, with no running water, which is awesome. Thank you very much. I'm kind of reliving the commune days. I was born on a commune, the Bean Commune, down there in Bean Hollow, bathing in the stream, crayfish eating our feet. And actually, I was brought home in a sled towed behind a snow machine down to our $50 a month hunting camp with no running water and no electric. So that's where I find myself now. And I actually organized tonight's events on my iPhone because I don't even have internet. And that's the beauty part about Vermont. You just have that innovative frontiersmanship, and you just keep going. You persevere, and you're going to succeed in the end. And that's what I would hope Hawk would touch upon, how he rose from where he was to where he is now. So in conclusion, I've written a new book I'm really excited about entitled Sex and Death. Great smash hit, I'm sure, shopping that around. And a backdoor pilot, Departed Harvest, that we're very thrilled about, in tandem with Tim's help and Ricky's help as well. So that, without further ado, I would like to pass the mic to Mr. Tim Cavanaugh.
Thank you, JoDa, and again, thank you for setting this up. I think it's great that someone set the ball in motion and get the wheels turning so that we can collaborate and get people together. And it's nice looking about the room and seeing so many familiar faces and having worked on projects with many of the folks that are in the room. And it's an exciting time in Vermont because there is so much creativity here, and people are very passionate about filmmaking and wanting to try and do that much more. So I think it's exciting to have someone like Hawk who lives in this state, having moved from their big palatial apartment in New York in 2003, which is when they came to Vermont in 2003. Monica, who you've all met, she Inloos to you. She will tell you all about Inloo if you have not heard. By show of hands, who has heard about Inloo through Monica? Or through, yes? All right, she will teach you all about that. Yeah, she'll make the rounds. Did you bring enough business cards?
I brought a few.
Yeah, okay, of course you did. But they came up in 2003 with their then 2 kids. They've had another one since then. And Hawk's got quite a wonderful past with his writing, and that's what we asked him to talk about tonight, because he started out somewhere, pushing the pencil, pushing the lead across, and And it's a really interesting story to hear from him because he's gone on and written some amazing features, as I'm sure you're very familiar with. Iron Man,
Yeah.
Academy Award nominated for Children of Men, and then this July, Cowboys and Aliens with Harrison Ford and Daniel Craig, which will be coming out. Before all that, doing Independence, and one that he did was with First Snow, and that's what we asked him to speak about tonight, because we wanted to find out from a production level, the very startup of it, getting that production team together and building it, and how you get someone like a J.K. Simmons on board and Guy Pearce on board and build that budget and then make the film. What the hell's so funny over there? What the hell? Anyways. All right, and with that, let's bring him up here. Hot Ostby, everybody.
Do I sit? Do I stand? What do I, all right, I'll sit. I'll sit. Well, first of all, it's really amazing to actually come out of your little writing den and be among real people rather than imaginary ones. So thanks for that. And I'm very honored to be here. But I think it's really great. I mean, you know, to be among people who share your passion is such an enormous thing. I mean, in LA, it's taken for granted. You walk out your door, you throw a dart, you're going to hit somebody who's working on a screenplay, who's written a screenplay, who's planning on writing one, who's, you know, everybody there is kind of in it, and it's a little, you know, you get so caught up in the noise and the business of it that it's very easy to forget, you know, the storytelling part of it, and that's what it really begins with. I mean, you may have big stars that sign on to things or who want to do things, but nothing moves until there's a script. I mean, it's nothing, and you have to create it. You have to create it out of nothing often, or if you're adapting, you're creating it out of something. But it's, you know, for anything you want to do in that business, to have a story sense, to understand what it is, to tell a story, and you know, the forces at work there, it's essential. I mean, directing, acting, you know, it's absolutely essential. You know, I'll take it back to how I got into all this, and you know, as strange, you know, I mean, I used to imagine starting out, like, it seems so bizarre, like, how do they do it out there, like these movies, how do they get produced, how do they, and then you realize it's the same thing you're doing at home or when you're making a student film. It's really the same damn thing. It's a story, and there's a camera, and there's actors, and it happens sort of the same way. It's just on a bigger scale. But I never came from like a pedigree. You know, my dad wasn't the amazing poet of Norway, you know, yodeling up in the mountains and writing great poetry. We have no pedigree of writing in our family. What we do have is my mom had a great love of books. And we used to have a ton of books around the house. We used to have bookshelves everywhere. And the smell of those books, you know, I grew up around them. And the covers, I used to look at the covers. They were so intriguing. And I started reading early, and I just, you know, in the winter in Norway where I grew up, like, you know, to pick up a book and you know, to read Alistair MacLean and get transported to Indonesia in the middle of, you know, it was so, it was just amazing. And I loved reading. And I just, you know, I would go through books, like they were like my little drug, and I think, I mean, that certainly is what made it for me later. I mean, I just loved storytelling, the transportation of being immersed in a story, and all that stuff, and so I sort of started off with this idea that I was going to be a novelist, and I was going to write novels, and it was that's how it, you know, was going to happen for me, and I started writing a few, and it was really hard. It was impossible. I mean, a novel is you know, you start writing, and then you get a few pages in, and you go, oh my God, I'm like chipping away at this, you know, at the Everest here. I'm never going to get up. This is impossible. I can't do it. And so I kept trying, and it was really tough. And you know, I would just get caught up in the minutia. It just seemed so mind-boggling, the whole thing. Like, you had this character, and you were trying to say all these things at once, and it was just confusing. And I would always stop. I would get a few pages in, and it just, you know, it just never sort of took hold. I just couldn't do it. And then years later, I went to BU, and I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I was in a very... I did. Uh-oh. No, that's wonderful. That's where I met Monica. Best thing of the... It's amazing. Great. What? Oh, it was? Oh, Kenmore. The Rat's Killer? That was
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, all right. That's gone now. It's very gilded. It's like 42nd Street. It's gone. Now you can lick the sidewalk. But where was I? Right. When I got there, I took a film course, and I just realized, like, of all the other courses I was taking, like, film just stuck with me. There was something about it. Like, when I heard something, it just, I remembered it. It wasn't like economics, where I'd have to go back and literally read the book 10 times and try to cram this information into my head and make it stick, and then, so I could regurgitate it and then immediately forget it. Film was something, I heard it once, and it was just there. And it was, it was just intriguing. I just realized, hey, that's, without really knowing it, that's something I really love doing. And at the same time, there was a kid in our dorm who, came from California, and he was didn't like doing homework or writing papers, so I would always write his papers for him. And they were wildly interesting because his father was a very high-powered exec at some studio or another. But he had these amazing stories just of the business and the people who stayed at their house, and I just became fascinated. I was sort of getting the business, the things you couldn't read in books from him about the industry, and it sounded crazy and wild and fascinating, and at the same time, oh, would you like to give me a... Please.
Take your glass.
Thank you.
Excuse me, I'm
No,
sorry.
not at all. This is great. So I was sort of getting it, but I was really starting to get enamored with this film thing, and I would go to the library, which I would never do for economics or math, or like go look up, hey, well, how do they do this or how do they do that? And so I just knew, look, I've got this, there's something here, and obviously, you're wondering if you're ever going to eat. It's such a, what am I, film? I mean, what do I know about that? Nothing. But I just went with that little thread, and then I realized that somebody had to write these movies, and there was a guy that I knew he was just furiously writing. He was just like his printer was always like pages spewing out, and he had rejection letters from official letterhead from Lucasfilm, and I was just blown away. I was like, wow. This guy's like submitted things to these, he was like a god, he had rejection letters from like Lucasfilm, all these places, and you're less like, that's the letterhead from Lucasfilm. So I bought Sid Field's book, and I went home and I was like, I'm going to write a script. That's what I'm going to do. And I had this idea, and it actually was sort of similar to City Slickers, strangely enough, by the time I was done. And that was just as City Slickers was getting released, but it was just an attempt. What I wanted to do was to start and just get to the finish, to say I finished something, which I never could do without novel writing. I'd get halfway in, and it was just too complex. I just, the research of it was so hard. I mean, I don't know. It was like getting halfway up Everest and realizing you have none of the skills, none of the gear to get there. But with screenwriting, it was a very different sort of thing. I mean, it felt like it could be done. It was 120 pages, not 250, 300, 400 of detailed sort of. But my goal was just to finish, to start, and then get to the end and say, hey, I've written a script. And of course, it was a terrible script, and everybody has 5 or 6 or 7 very bad scripts in them, which you have to write out and essentially just vomit out, and then you start realizing that okay. I know something is wrong. Let me address that. What is wrong? Why can't I? Why does this seem weird? Or why can't I get this act to sort of line up? And this moment seems weird, and I'm telling the audience too much. And you start getting savvy about these things. The more and more you do, it's like a muscle. I tell the kids with their writing. I mean, it's the more you do, the more proficient you get at it. You just start realizing the things not to write rather than the things to write. And I do have to say, I believe more than ever, it is about the things you don't write, the things you leave off screen, than the things you actually write about. It's the white space, and that's where the story lives. I mean, any audience that watches a movie is watching a movie that's off screen and the movie that's on screen. And it's that off screen movie. The more you can play to that, which is in the imagination of the audience, that's the tricky part. And you can get to that. It isn't something, I will say, just to go back a little bit, but my mom did try writing at one point. She loved stories, and she really did try her hand at writing, but she got 1 rejection letter and quit. She was absolutely convinced to the day she died that you were born with this talent, and if you don't have it, like if you can't, there's only a certain number of people, Mario Puzo, these guys, they write that story